Hi, I'm Frank. Intermatic time clock, dual intermatic time clock with freeze guard.
This is the most common non-automated time clock that we see in our area of North Texas. Parts for these timers are readily available at your local pool works or good pool supply retailers.
I just want to go over some basic instructions so how people know how these operate. First of all, this is the AC2 switch. So if I kill that, that kills all 220 power. If you have multiple pumps, it's possible you may have multiple AC2 switches or disconnect switches. So, but that's the purpose of that. You turn that off and then all 220 power. Now we do occasionally run into where somebody uses a 110 switch and only kills one leg of the 220.
Please be aware that turning off breakers or disconnect switches does not guarantee that all electricity is shut off to a system. All components should still be checked for live voltage. Please hire a professional.
So you still may have some live power in your timer box by flipping that switch, but it should be an AC2 disconnect, which kills both legs of a 220 power system. This is a GFCI, so if the lights ever don't work, you can just test and reset it. If it won't test and reset, it's possible that the GFCI is bad and needs to be replaced. They do go bad on occasion. If your lights don't work, that's the first thing you check.
Please use a qualified and certified professional to replace or repair electrical components associated with your pool equipment.
Okay. On the Intermatic time clock, typically the way this is set up, if you have a cleaner with the booster pump, that's the booster pump, for a Polaris cleaner, if you notice that pump turns on, but if this power is not on, this one will not turn on by itself. The cleaner pump is a slave to the filter pump. The filter pump provides water for the cleaner pump, so the filter pump has to be running for the cleaner pump. You can hear that coming on, maybe you can, but if this pump is off, this one's dead. That's typically the way it's wired. This is the temp sensor for the remote bulb thermostat, or the freeze protection. If when it gets cold, this is sensing air temperature, not water temperature. If it gets cold, like this one right now is set at 35 degrees, we typically set them about 37 degrees. That way if there's any false heating off the wall, we don't worry about that throwing off the actual temp reading of the sensor. A lot of times these are not sticking outside the box. A lot of times they are coiled up inside here, and you can see that's lizards. By the way, lizards love to get up in these boxes, but typically that coil is either inside this box or laying down in here, but this one has been ran and then pushed through, and I prefer them to be outside. That way false heating from inside the cabinet will not give it a false reading. Right. The way you check a freeze guard is, one, first cold night, you just come out and make sure you cannot turn this on. If you can turn this off and on and you know it's freezing outside, then that means this part of your Intermatic freeze protection has failed and it needs to be replaced, and you just need to make sure this pump stays on. And if you take this off tripper and that turns the pump off as this wheel spins, when it comes and gets to this point, it will turn it off. But if we're need to be in freeze protection mode and the freeze protection is not working, then you can just remove this off tripper. You can leave the on tripper and it will just stay on 24/7 and not turn off and possibly cause some freeze damage for you. But I want to show you how it works. So, and this is a good way to test freeze protection. All right, so I have the temp sensor for the remote bulb thermostat of the Intermatic freeze protector, which is this right here. I'm taking a glass of ice water, and if I dip that sensor down in that ice water, did you hear that? Or it turned the pump on, and it will stay on. I warmed it up with my hand, it turned it back off. I'm not flipping anything here, but listen. That is the freeze protection bypassing this timer. The reason I'm showing these screws right here is those screws are hot, and a lot of times these come off, they break, or somebody worked on it and they didn't replace it. And so when this shield is on here, you can see if I go to flip this switch back and forth, if my finger touches one of those screws, it could shock me. So you need, if these guards are missing, you do need to replace them. There's a little screw right here. A lot of times you got to turn it on. You see that little screw right there? And then the way these guards go on is they see how that kind of clicked on? That kind of clips, and then it has a little peg right here. So you clip this through the little hole, and that kind of locks it in place, and you have a peg, and then there's a screw that would go in a little hole right there. That screw is missing. Somebody's removed it and lost it. Screw's missing, but this is locked on here, and it's locked on right here in that little peg, just like this one. But this one has the screw holding it in place, but that screw is missing, so we're just going to have to do without it for right now. And then when you put this back on, see, now I can't touch those screws. If my finger gets past there, I don't have to worry about getting shocked. I have a 5/16 hex head, or you can use a flat head. Just make sure that's in there good. Time clocks. The way the time clocks work is this clock turns this direction. And so when this comes around, that's the on tripper. You have on and off. They are different. See, that one says on, this one says off. When the on tripper comes around and hits this point, it will kick it on. When the off tripper following it comes around, it will trip it off. If these are off time, you can pull this. You have to pull it out. See how I'm pulling it out? And then you can reset the time. It will be at your...
The clocks do have to be replaced occasionally. If one is not keeping time, you should have it replaced.
At your will. Remember, when you put it on the timer, when you put those trippers on the timer for the Polaris or the booster pump for the cleaner, it needs to be within this window. Because if you say we have it turn on at 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. and the clock is not on, and that timer comes around, it turns it on, nothing happens because the filter pump is not running. So whatever this window is, if you're running your timer, you need the on-off tripper to be within this window, and these should keep time together so they're always in the same place. You can look up in this hole. You can't really see it because it's dark up in there, but if it wasn't a camera, you could probably see it. But back up in this hole, there's gears. And if those gears are not turning, that means the internals behind this clock have gone bad, and this clock needs to be replaced. To set these trippers, you can just loosen that screw. See how that screw goes through? Just loosen that screw. It slips over. You need to make sure it goes all the way on to where the screw is actually going onto this ridge. And set it at a time. Just tighten it up. Recommend using a pair of pliers or something to make sure you get it really snug, because it will slide around on there if you don't get it really snug. But I'm not going to tighten it up really good here. But I want to put the on and off on here within that window. See, because these are set at the same time. So when this one turns on, this one can turn on. That's your Intermatic time clock. The basics of how it operates. Replacing this protection so you don't accidentally get your finger in there and get shocked. How the freeze protection works. Notice it's about 40 degrees outside, so I'm gonna see it automatically kicked it on just because I raised the temperature. If I lower the temperature, it'll give it a little bit of time, but it'll turn back off. You can check your freeze protection. You know, if it's 40 degrees outside, it's not cold enough for the freeze protection. You can turn it all the way up to 44 and it should kick it on, but make sure you turn it back or you're going to run your pump unnecessarily when it's not cold enough for it. Or you can put your remote bulb thermostat or your temp sensor, stick it in a glass of ice water, or if that's not exposed, first cold night, if this is not exposed, first cold night every year, when it gets down, say 30 degrees, you want to come out and make sure if you turn this off and on, the pump, it doesn't matter. The pump just continues to run and you don't have to worry about it. And the booster pump is not freeze protected. by the way. It will not automatically kick on the freeze protection because that's not necessary, because water is passing through the booster pump a little bit, enough to keep it from freezing, and it's not a concern that we need to worry about.
Hopefully this helps you understand the function of your Intermatic time clock with freeze protection. Please ask any questions you may have or comment.